True Crime Brewery contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Medical information is opinion based on facts of a crime and should not be interpreted as medical advice or treatment. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to True Crime Brewery. I'm Jill.
And I'm Dick.
Among the thousands of vacationers who traveled to Ocean City, Maryland on Memorial Day weekend in 2002 were two couples whose paths crossed with horrific results. The first couple, Joshua Ward and Geney Crutchley, were good people looking for a relaxing weekend. But the second couple, Erika and Benjamin Sifrit, had much darker plans. Join us at the quiet end for Bad Romance. At first glance, Erika and Benjamin appeared to be a typical young married couple, but they were a deadly match. They were big partiers, always looking for a bigger thrill. When drinking and drugs were no longer enough to satisfy them, they moved on to burglarizing businesses and carrying loaded guns with them. Then, one dreadful night, the Sifrits planned a twisted game of murder and mayhem, showing their gravitation towards violence and their complete lack of human empathy. Really a horrible, horrible case, maybe a little extra warning here. Not something you want your kids listening to, for sure.
No, this is a pretty gruesome one.
It really is. I think that's why we put it off so long, but it is fascinating, so we have decided we're going to cover it today. And I'm glad we did. It is fascinating and horrific. Right,
it is. And we'll do a very quick beer review. A nice Maryland beer. It's called Loose Cannon from Heavy Seas Beer. It's an IPA that's 7.25% alcohol by volume. This is orange color with a thin head. Nice floral aroma. Pretty hoppy taste, but it was balanced, not overly hoppy, anything like that. So, pretty good beer.
All right. Sounds really good. I love an IPA on a day like today, so let's open it up.
Okay, we'll open it.
All right, Dickie, follow me down here to the quiet end. Now, I've tried to get all the details of this case in, but I did avoid some of the most graphic material.
Nothing wrong with that?
No, I think it's necessary.
So, born in 1978, Erika Grace grew up as an only child just outside of Roaring Spring, Pennsylvania. Now, her parents were quite wealthy, so she had every opportunity given to her. Erika and her parents, Mitch and Cookie, lived in a big brick house with luxurious landscaping, nice cars, and, the best of everything.
Well, where else would you expect a Cookie to live, right? Cookie goes to the golf club, she lunches with the girls. She gives to charity. That's Cookie.
Yeah, that's an apt name, isn't it?
It is.
Erika's father, Mitch, was a pretty authoritative guy, and he could be quite intense. And he pressured his daughter to be the best, whether it was her basketball team or anything else. He actually would build a half court inside their garage for her to practice on every day, whether it was raining or not. Now, although Erika would later focus on her father's strictness when discussing her childhood, he adored her and gave her just about anything she asked for. Erika's mother, Cookie, was a stay-at-home mom.
What else would Cookie do?
She'd be a stay-at-home mom. She was very pretty, and her favorite activity was shopping. According to Erika, her parents were so tightly bonded that she often felt left out. This was something that bothered her a lot, and she resented that.
Yeah, I have to call bullshit on that, but to me, maybe Erika just needed to be the center of attention all of the time in order to be happy. She was spoiled.
Well, it seems like she was.
Yeah. So maybe she just didn't like it when the parents paid attention to one another instead of her.
Mm-hmm.
When Erika was a teenager, Mitch moved the family from Roaring Spring to Hollidaysburg, where he built a big 2-story home with a swimming pool in the back and the indoor basketball court in the garage. Erika wanted more playing time on the basketball court, and she wasn't getting it in Roaring Spring. So instead of arguing with her coaches, which Mitch was not above doing, he moved to a town where he knew Erika could get all the playing time she wanted. So if you believe that he actually moved his family and built a new house so his daughter could get more basketball time, then you're getting more of an idea about this family. In Hollidaysburg, things were different, and Mitch coached her team, and he watched her from the balcony above the home basketball court as she shot free throws and practiced layups for hours. He even went ahead and hired a coach to teach her moves that gave her an advantage over the other players. Now, watching as she saw her parents' fairy tale-like relationship over the years, Erika believed she needed to find the perfect man for her own perfect future. She kept the image in her mind, fostering a fantasy. Growing up in what most people would describe as a privileged existence, Erika had expensive tastes and really just a bottomless need for positive reinforcement. After graduating high school with high honors, she enrolled at the University of Mary Washington, where she studied art and history. She was known as a gifted basketball player in high school, but once she got involved in the collegiate athletics, she was just a slightly above average player. She wasn't tall, so that held her back a lot from going any further in that sport. She was actually very petite.
Yeah, so was she thinking that she could make a career in basketball? Or was that just kind of a dream?
I don't know. I really couldn't say. I think that there was some pressure there, though, to continue at least through college.
Oh, yeah.
But she only got a partial scholarship.
In 1999, Erika met Benjamin, BJ, Sifrit in Fredericksburg, Virginia, at a bar. But at that time, BJ wasn't interested in a relationship. He was focused on his career as a U.S. Navy SEAL, and he had plans, and those plans didn't include a wife or a family. He was at the top of his SEAL class, so it looked like both Erika and BJ were pretty high achievers.
They absolutely were.
Months later, BJ and Erika met again at a Navy SEAL party. Then they began to see each other regularly after that, and Erika was basically gone. She was head over heels in love with this guy.
He was handsome, and she seemed to have this attraction to the tough type, which a Navy SEAL. How much tougher can you get?
I don't know that you could.
So Erika called home one night in 1999 and talked to her dad. According to Mitch, Erika told him that she and BJ were thinking about getting married. Now, Mitch was confused because this wasn't the daughter he thought he knew. She'd only known this guy for a couple of months, and they had to get to know each other first, he said. But Erika told him she wouldn't live with someone without marrying him. She was kind of using religion as an excuse to go through with something she'd already done, actually, because she and BJ had married before this call without telling her parents. So that was the end of that discussion, and Mitch never heard anything else about it until Erika brought BJ home one day to Altoona and introduced him as her husband.
That's something.
So their first year together had been exciting, with one party right after the other. Being married to a SEAL was fun for a while, but the sporadic sex, the drugs, and waiting for her husband to return from where the Navy had sent him got pretty old pretty fast for Erika. As the romance was seeming to fizzle out, BJ and Erika began burglarizing Hooters restaurants and small businesses and stores around Altoona for fun. So she had some weird obsession with Hooters. So they even started their own side business on eBay selling the stolen merchandise.
So this must have been a fairly big operation, selling stuff on eBay?
Yes.
They must have been cleaning out the stores.
Seems like it, although at the same time you have to take everything this woman says with a few grains of salt.
Ah, so you're
not the
saying
most
that
trustworthy.
She liked to bend the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
And break it. But she did say later she was making up to $2,500 per week. And she not only participated in these burglaries, but she too loved the high of being able to break in and take things. It gave her a real thrill and a sense of power.
Now later that summer, Erika and BJ met her parents, Mitch and Cookie, for dinner in Ocean City, New Jersey. This was the first time Erika had introduced her new boyfriend to her parents. Erika looked happy in the photographs taken on the trip. Now, she and BJ had already decided that they would get married, but they hadn't told anyone else yet.
No, they ran off to Las Vegas and were married at the Silver Bell Wedding Chapel. This was just a 5-minute wedding with no family or friends in attendance. Then what Erika did is she transferred all of her college classes to Virginia Beach, Virginia, and moved off of the campus where BJ was stationed with the SEALs in North Carolina. The Navy sent BJ to Arkansas until January 2000, so they didn't live together until later on. When they did start actually living together, BJ began to notice that Erika was a different person than maybe he thought. She had obsessive-compulsive disorder and anxiety, so she was difficult to be with full-time. She was very clingy, very demanding, so whatever her mental issues were, she wasn't taking care of them. She was actually worsening them with drug abuse and just really strange behavior.
Yeah. Now, after Erika told her parents that she and BJ had gotten married, they gave them some money so Erika could buy her own scrapbooking business. The store was in an Altoona mall, and it opened in April 2001. And after BJ was discharged from the Navy after several disciplinary issues, Mitch financed a 2-month vacation for him and Erika to South America.
So reward for bad behavior.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Okay. Erika later told the police that the choice of South America as a destination came from her new addiction to Xanax and Valium. In fact, she and BJ had bought thousands of pills in South America and smuggled them back home. Then when they returned from that trip, Erika's obsessions and insecurities really came to a head. I would be reasonably sure that the drugs didn't help, particularly the way she was abusing them and snorting them.
Yeah, that's a new one to me, snorting Xanax and Valium. Because usually when I think of snorting, I think of drugs that kind of elevate your mood, like cocaine or meth or something like that. So I'm not sure how that affects a person.
Yeah. Well, you can snort lots of stuff, right?
Well, sure you can. Yes, but it really seemed to make her out of it. You know, it really changed who she was, I think, mentally and emotionally, which drug abuse can definitely do, which is really sad.
Not a good look for Erika.
So even though the parents had bought that scrapbooking store, BJ would say he wanted to get a job of his own. But Erika refused to be away from him for several hours a day, so he agreed to work with her at the scrapbooking store. So even though he seems like he's complaining a bit, he really fell into just like a bath of gold here, right?
Yeah.
He fell into a very cushy situation with her.
Well, I'm sure he didn't have the upbringing she had.
No.
And he gets into the SEALs, and he's a top SEAL student, but then he gets kicked out.
Well, I mean, he pretty much got himself kicked out.
Yeah.
He was insubordinate. He had her come and stay with him in the barracks or wherever they stay.
Yeah.
Now, he would blame a lot of that on her, but it was just the combination of the two of them, bad combination of people. They brought out the worst in each other.
So it seems.
So Erika and BJ were together pretty much all the time then. And then he wanted Erika to buy a gun for herself. He already owned a couple. She bought a Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum, and Erika kept it in an ankle holster, sometimes in her purse or in her lower back, down by her butt, back of her pants. She always had the gun with her, though. Besides BJ and her gun, Erika also loved jewelry, something she'd probably picked up from her mother. She was obsessed with the Coach handbag that she'd bought and kept most of her jewelry in. Now, in her parents', Cookie and Mitch's house, there were actual glass jewelry cases like the ones you'd see in a jewelry store. So nothing ostentatious about that.
Well, you don't want to have all your jewelry just piled on top of each other in some box, right?
Well, no, you want to display it in your living room or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Good Lord. Well, another odd thing was Erika's obsession with that Hooters restaurant chain. She had a closet full of Hooters clothing and memorabilia. And as they started living together, Erika and BJ began to learn more and more about each other's quirks. Erika loved anything with the Hooters trademark on it. So I guess Hooters doesn't sell the tops that the waitresses wear, so she and BJ would break into the restaurants and take the shirts and any other stuff they wanted. So burglary became their new hobby, something they did together as a couple. It was such a high, though, for BJ to break into a store and steal things, Erika would later say, that he usually got an erection from it and masturbated afterwards. So that's kind of gross. Erika said he didn't want to have sex with her after a while, but the stealing was a real turn-on for him. He was easily bored and enjoyed breaking the rules. He did it with his driving as well, speeding up to 150 miles an hour and leading the police on chases, and usually he got away with it.
32-year-old Joshua Ford was in love with his 51-year-old live-in girlfriend. That's Margene Geney Crutchley. Bit unusual age-wise, but the difference in age didn't really matter to them. Joshua and Jeannie liked to have fun, and they were committed to each other. They had first met at a Christmas party in Boston in 1999, and since 2001 they had been living together in a Virginia suburb. Joshua had a 6-year-old son from a first marriage, and even his ex-wife had nothing but good things to say about him. So for Joshua, the move to Virginia, away from most of his family back in Boston, was a new beginning for him. Back in October 2001, a tragedy had befallen his family. His brother, Mark Ford, had a 23-year-old daughter, Kelly. Kelly went missing after leaving a Massachusetts rehab center. Her headless body was later found buried in a shallow grave along the Cape Cod shoreline. And if that's not gruesome enough for you, her heart had been cut out of her body.
Ugh.
Police had no suspects, but suspected there was a serial killer around. Joshua and the rest of the family, especially Kelly's parents, worked hard to move on with life after such an unimaginable loss. No one in that family could have believed that another family member would meet with such a violent death.
Well, how could one family be so unfortunate? On Saturday, May 25th, 2002, Joshua and Jeannie decided to take their first weekend trip of the summer season to Ocean City, Maryland. It was under 200 miles from their Virginia home. Memorial Day weekend was really the first big summer holiday, and both of them had a long weekend off from work. Both were expected back to work on Tuesday, May 28th. In fact, Jeannie had a meeting scheduled with her staff at 10 o'clock in the morning. Joshua had rented a room at the Atlantis, a 20-story high-rise overlooking the beach, right on the middle of the strip, with the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the bay on the other. Conveniently, within walking distance from the Atlantis were several nightclubs and bars and restaurants. The popular restaurant chain Hooters was down the block, as well as the Rainbow condominiums, which were very upscale. The well-known nightclub, Sifrits, spelled out Seacrets because it's by the sea, was just a 5-minute ride or a half-hour walk away from where they were staying. So Joshua didn't want to worry about driving after going out drinking, but the local bus went everywhere they could want to go during their stay. DUI and other alcohol-related crimes did make up an overwhelming percentage of the summer arrests. And I think that's how it is in any kind of tourist town like that.
Oh, of course.
On May 25th, 2002, near dusk, Joshua and Jeannie waited for the bus outside of their condo to take them out for a night of partying and relaxation. Once on board, they sat in the front. They planned on going out, having a few drinks, so they left their car behind.
So the bus went a few blocks south and stopped at the Rainbow condominium building, just a couple minutes from Josh and Jeannie's place to there. As people began to board, a young couple stepped up and stood by the driver's seat. The man, who was B.J. Sifrit, was tall and handsome, and he looked like he was very drunk. The woman, Erika, was petite and also very intoxicated. She was stumbling around and just looked like she was lost. So as they boarded the bus and stood and searched their pockets for her exact fare, the man seemed impatient. They had just left Hooters, which was across the street. They'd shared 2 pitchers of beer and 2 plates of hot wings. "All I got is a $5 bill," BJ told the bus driver. Then he looked at everyone on board the bus and asked if anyone had change. He sounded tired and kind of out of it. Now, Joshua was the kind of guy who always wanted to help people. Felt sorry for the young couple.
Yeah, they were in their early 20s. Jeannie's 50, so they just kind of looked at these younger people that they wanted to help out.
Right.
"Are you going to Sifrits?" Joshua asked BJ, and pretty much everyone on the bus was headed to that popular night spot. So BJ and Erika looked at one another and shrugged. Sure, they'd go there. And Joshua paid their fare for them. So the couple told Joshua that they would buy Jeannie and Joshua a drink once they got to Sifrits. BJ and Erika sat down in an empty seat next to Geney and Joshua, and Geney smiled at them. Geney was happy to be out having fun, and she was probably proud of how Joshua was always helping others. After waiting for an hour in line, the two couples entered the club. As promised, BJ bought Geney and Joshua a drink. Inside of the club, strobe lights flashed and the music was too loud to hear the person standing right next to you without yelling. Erika seemed nervous and restless after taking shots of straight vodka. Both Erika and BJ were 24, but there was something strange about Erika, Geney noticed. Throughout the night, Erika had been obsessed with the idea of maintaining the high she'd achieved through both drugs and alcohol. She'd snorted more Xanax outside of the club while waiting in line, and then more when she got into the club. She kept going into the bathroom. Instead of relaxing and enjoying herself, she was just focused on keeping herself high, like it was her job. She ordered more shots and then would seem to pass out in a sitting position. But then around midnight, BJ slapped her on her arm and congratulated her for getting into the club with her gun in her waistband. Some security they have here, he said, laughing loudly. Geney, who was standing nearby, wondered what he was talking about. BJ was talking about Erika making it past security with her .357 Magnum revolver, the gun she rarely left home without. There were 4 security guards at the door with wands, but Erika had made it past them all. Erika told Geney that she was Bonnie to BJ's Clyde. These were also the names they'd given to their 2 pet pythons, she added, and one of them was back at the Rainbow right now. She also said they had cobras and even a crocodile. BJ had named his cobra Hitler after one of BJ and Erika's heroes, so they're white supremacists in addition to everything else.
Yeah, privately, BJ would brag to Erika about him being a racist. In fact, she agreed with him on most of his horrendous beliefs. Later, Erika would call BJ a control freak who had become mentally and physically abusive. But tonight, Erika was happy. She and BJ were partners who felt that they lived up to their Bonnie and Clyde nicknames.
Well, they were certainly trying to, it seems. But it was likely Erika's harmless appearance, being so petite, that had allowed her to get the gun into the club. But Geney was concerned, so she walked over to Erika and was asking about the gun. Now, Geney wasn't an uptight woman. She did like to have a good time and go out for drinks and dancing. She even smoked pot. But she was worried about what type of people they were spending time with. All the talk of guns, snakes, drugs, and Hitler was disturbing. Why would you need guns? Geney asked Erika. Geney was referring to BJ's gun, too. But Erika just laughed. I've only had mine for a few months. It was a gift from BJ. But later, when Erika was asked if it was customary for her and BJ to carry guns, she said, well, yes. Then she screamed about how she was addicted to her Coach purse, her gun, her jewelry, and her pills. She said that she carried her jewelry with her everywhere in her purse. BJ, she added, carried his gun inside his waistband and wore it in a leather shoulder holster. She said she'd gotten used to having guns around from spending time with BJ and his SEAL friends.
So Geney told Joshua about her concerns. But he said, it's no big deal. Now, he hadn't spoken to Erika as much as Geney had, and he didn't seem to understand how bizarre the couple actually was. He thought that Geney was overreacting because she hated guns.
Yeah, Now we don't know exactly what was going on here. There may have been some sexual attraction to Erika on Joshua's part. There may have been some idea of some kind of hookup. We're not sure. But he was definitely lured back to their place. And
I just wonder. You should have listened to Geney a little more, I guess.
Well, looking back, absolutely.
I just don't see how they would go back to spend time with this couple in their condo, knowing that she carried a gun and that they were both intoxicated. It just sounds like a bad prescription.
Absolutely. It really does. Now, Joshua was only in his early 30s. He'd been drinking and having a good time, so maybe his judgment wasn't what it should have been. Joshua and Erika actually spent 15 to 20 minutes together in one of the bathrooms there. It was near closing time, and Erika did have a habit of making sexual promises to men that she and BJ would meet at bars. Like she'd suggest that they continue the party together after the bar closed. And detectives later would consider that Erika likely had made one of her graphically sexual promises to Joshua when they were in that restroom together. So he could have been lured by drugs, by sex, who knows. But in an interaction later that same week, Erika did tell a man who she and BJ met at a bar and were hanging out with, "Come back to our condo and I'll let you do me in the ass. I like it. My husband wants to watch."
Yikes.
Yeah. But BJ kept Geney busy while Erika was with Joshua, and Erika asked Joshua if he and Geney wanted to come back to their penthouse and hang out. She said that she and BJ wanted to continue the party and it would be fun. They could all take a dip in the hot tub, have more drinks, do more drugs. So Joshua was on board.
Yeah. Now, according to Erika, Joshua mentioned something about having some really good marijuana back in his Atlantis room. He wanted to pick it up and bring it over to the Rainbow to share with them. Geney and Joshua would also need to pick up their bathing suits if they're going in the hot tub. So after Joshua and Erika came out of the restroom, Erika said later, they met back up with BJ and Geney and decided to take the bus back to the Atlantis. After getting off the bus, Erika, BJ, Joshua, and Geney went up to Geney and Joshua's room at the Atlantis. And after Joshua got his and Geney's things together, they all walked along the beach back to the Rainbow condos.
So Joshua and BJ sat and smoked some of his marijuana while Geney went upstairs to change into her bathing suit. Erika said she didn't like to smoke pot, but she was still snorting her crushed Xanax pills. Erika obsessively organized all of her things at all times. She had always put things in the same place so she would know where they were. This gave her a sense of power over her OCD. So knowing where everything was, she would feel like she could relax. While Geney and BJ were at the table smoking pot, Joshua got up and wandered around the living room. And then Erika began looking for her brown Hooters bag, which she always kept in a particular place inside of the condo. She then noticed her purse was sitting on the other side of the room, where she claimed she would never put it herself. So putting these two things together, according to Erika, she believed at that moment that someone had taken the Hooters bag and moved her pocketbook. So this is what Erika said, but remember, she's not credible. In fact, most investigators would later determine that Erika and BJ were just beginning to play a sick game with Geney and Joshua, accusing them of stealing as an excuse to pull a gun on them. This was likely planned because BJ had spoken before of wanting to kill a human being. So maybe burglary wasn't enough for him anymore. Maybe murder was the next step in their need for cheap thrills.
Well, that's not an uncommon pattern for killers. You kind of escalate the degree of violence.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing here.
Seems that way, yes.
So according to Erika, she started looking around the first floor of the condo. When you enter the condo, the laundry room was right in front. To the left of that, there were 2 bedrooms with a bathroom attached to one of them. Walking down the short hallway to the east end of the condo, there's a set of stairs off to the right leading to the second floor. And from there is a glass table with 6 chairs, behind which were 3 bar stools against a counter opening into the kitchen. Before reaching the balcony, which ran the entire width of the condo, there were 2 areas with couches, end tables, and a TV. Now, the 3 of them, Joshua, Geney, and BJ, all were having a pretty good time. They're laughing, drinking their beer, and just relaxing and hanging out. But Erika seemed to go into a complete panic. So without telling anyone, she later claimed, she looked in a few places to see if she could find her purse. And she ran upstairs. When she got into her bedroom, her purse was sitting on the counter by the bed. But when she looked inside, Erika noted that her little red Coach handbag, where she carried everything of value, including a $10,000 diamond and her wallet with all her credit cards, cash, and her pill case, that was missing.
Well, she started running around, overturning pillows and blankets and looking inside of cabinets and closets. Then she decided to call 911 She later claimed because she believed that Joshua and Geney were trying to scam them and steal their things. She would say she had showed her things to Geney earlier that evening, and Geney had admired them, and now they were gone, supposedly. Under the impression that Joshua and Geney had stolen her things and that she and BJ had invited thieves into their condo, Erika picked up the phone without telling anyone there and called 911 from the upstairs bedroom. So this bedroom is above where Joshua, Geney, and BJ were sitting at a glass table on the first floor. This wasn't a spacious enough area for someone to go upstairs and not be heard by the people below. So unless she was whispering, the three people downstairs would have heard her side of the conversation. Erika knew this because she had made private calls from the condo before, and those were all made from her cell phone, either upstairs outside of the balcony or on the outside balcony downstairs. So according to the phone records, Erika made this call to 911 at 3:01 a.m. And let's listen to the call. It's only about 30 seconds long, but I think it's helpful to actually hear her voice.
Worcester 911, do you have an emergency?
Yes, I have an emergency at my apartment. There are people in my house who I don't know, and my purse is suddenly missing, and I'm afraid I'm going to have a robbery here.
Okay, people in your apartment at this time?
Yes.
I'll connect you to the police. Stay on the line.
Hey.
What?
I'm upstairs in a bedroom where they don't know where I am.
Okay, I'll connect you to the police. You can tell them, okay?
Okay.
Huh?
So I think she does sound pretty stoned.
Yeah, but not too panicked or anything like that.
Oh, not panicked at all. No, very calm, I'd say. Now, she hung up before she did give that address, so for whatever reason, if the police didn't know where she was or if they decided it wasn't a real call, they didn't respond. Now, detectives would develop a theory that Geney and Joshua were already dead and lying on the bathroom floor when Erika made that 911 call. And if you think about it, that does make sense. The phone call was likely a way to cover up if the noise from gunshots had been heard by someone else in that building who had called 911. And what she told 911 was just untrue and kind of nonsensical. Why did she tell the dispatcher that she didn't know Geney and Joshua? She had spent several hours with them, she did know their names, and she'd even been to their room at the Atlantis, so she could have given information about them. So it really did seem that she was creating a story of self-defense in case she and BJ were caught with dead bodies in the condo. So like I said, BJ and Erika were playing a sick, twisted game of terror and murder with Geney and Joshua, who really had no way of understanding this crazy behavior. Geney grabbed Erika by both of her arms and started shaking her, according to what Erika would say later, saying, "We didn't take your stuff. You need to make BJ stop." According to what detectives could put together between objective evidence and Erika's changing stories, BJ pulled out his gun and then began to threaten the couple.
Yeah, he told them, "Take off your clothes," and he's waving his gun in their faces.
I just can't imagine how terrifying that would be.
No.
Oh my gosh.
Particularly this huge juxtaposition. They're sitting there having a good time, and then all of a sudden they're at gunpoint being screamed at.
Yeah, and it seems like these people could just turn on a dime on you.
I guess.
It's terrifying.
So they panicked, ran into the bathroom. They shut and locked the door behind them. Now, as they did that, Erika went out to the balcony, where she could see the frightened couple from the bathroom's window. Or she could also instruct BJ where to shoot his gun through the bathroom door.
Yeah, so Erika pointed toward Joshua and told BJ to shoot him. BJ shot Joshua through the door. Then he kicked in the door and shot Joshua again, this time in his head, killing him instantly. Poor Geney. Geney was sobbing uncontrollably, huddled beneath the bathroom vanity in the fetal position. BJ then shot Geney as she begged for her life. According to what Erika would say, he missed once and then had to shoot her a couple more times. So this woman just went through hell.
According to what Erika told one detective, Joshua and Geney had been pleading for their lives in the bathroom. She said that BJ turned to her and said, "I'm supposed to fucking waste them. Cool?" Because they're getting loud, and she just wanted them to shut up, Erika said she told BJ, You got them naked, you put a gun to their heads, just fucking do it.
So, after Joshua and Geney were both shot, BJ told Erika to open her knife and make sure that Geney was dead. Erika knelt down next to Geney, who was now huddled in a puddle of her own blood, and cut her on the right side of her abdomen. She actually cut into Geney deeply twice. Geney was likely dead, but neither of them had stopped to check. Erika and BJ decided that the bodies would have to be cut up in order to remove them from the building. Remember, they're several stories up.
Yeah, they can't just take the elevator downstairs, 20 floors or whatever it is.
No, not likely.
No. So somebody had the brilliant idea that we're going to need to cut up the bodies and take them out piecemeal.
Yeah, I don't know how you ever have that idea. It's crazy and disgusting and very upsetting. But like I said, it's an upsetting story. I don't want to go on and on about that, but remarkable to me. Just too much. So after they decapitated and dismembered the bodies, Erika claimed that BJ posed naked, holding his victims' heads up like trophies. Erika said that he had an erection, and he later told her he had masturbated over the bodies. And she'd describe additional graphic abuse of these victims' bodies, which we're going to pass on describing. BJ asked Erika to take a picture so he could show it to his old Navy SEAL buddies, Erika said. Then he told Erika to go out and buy black trash bags to put the body parts into.
So the knives they used to decapitate and dismember Geney and Joshua have been gifts they had bought each other for Valentine's Day. I think that's pretty romantic.
Yeah.
His and hers knives.
Yeah, why have we never thought of that?
Well,
because we're not disgusting, crazy people.
Wait till Valentine's, baby. There was blood covering the entire floor of the bathroom. The headless corpses were still inside the hot tub. BJ had cut off the arms and legs from the bodies, and he put them in the garbage bags. When he was done putting Joshua's torso into one of the bags, he walked over to one of the other bags with the legs inside, opened it, and broke a leg in half with his foot like with a stick of wood. Then he asked Erika if she would cook one of the legs for him to eat. According to her, she refused, and he did not eat any of the remains.
Wow, impressive of her.
Yeah, showed a little.
Well, it showed nothing, you're right. So on May 27th, they drove to Delaware, where they dumped the human remains in a dumpster behind a Food Lion grocery store. After taking a long nap that afternoon, Erika and BJ cleaned up the bathroom. So they've got a bathroom full of blood and body parts, and they say, hey, let's go take a nap.
Yeah.
It's just unimaginable to me. So the bathroom, of course, was still stained with blood, but they got it to be not quite as bad as it had been. Then the next day, Tuesday the 28th, they went to the Home Depot, where they bought paint, cleaning supplies, and a new bathroom door. Any bloody rags and paper towels and body tissue, along with the wood molding that was too damaged to be fixed, were put into trash bags or tossed down the garbage chute in the condo's hallway. Throughout everything, Erika later insisted BJ was telling her to take photos documenting the entire trip. Looking back on their trip to Ocean City, Erika, the scrapbooker, had recorded their activities in photos even after the murders. In almost all of the photos taken of them together, both before and after the murders, they're smiling, hugging, and kissing. There are even photos of Erika eating chicken wings, drinking beer, playing mini-golf, and getting a tattoo of a cobra on her hip. She got the cobra tattoo after the murders in the same region of her body where she had made the first cut on Geney's body. There's also a photo of Erika and BJ, each smiling with platefuls of crab legs in front of them, that was taken less than 24 hours after these murders. So like two newlyweds on their honeymoon, Erika and BJ seem to be having the time of their lives. But as noticed in some of the photos, Erika was wearing Joshua's ring on a chain around her neck, and it still had a small amount of blood on it. It's pretty clear that BJ was not controlling Erika and that she did not feel guilt or remorse for what they had done. When they spoke to the tattoo artist who'd done her tattoo, he said they were like a normal, happy couple, just having a great time on vacation.
Yeah, in fact, it's reasonable to believe that BJ and Erika were planning to continue to kill people. Just days after partying with Jeannie and Joshua, then killing and dismembering them, BJ and Erika met a new friend, Justin, at Sifrits. BJ and Erika had gone back there to drink, drug, and have fun. Justin seemed intoxicated, but he was fun to hang out with. So what had started as a day of just sitting outside in the sun and getting drunk had turned into a night of partying with Justin. At some point that night, one of the bouncers at Sifrits approached BJ and Erika, asking them to leave. Apparently, Erika was out of control and stumbling all over the place, disturbing people, and BJ had done some tequila shots and vomited right in the bar. BJ didn't mind leaving. Anyway, they'd been there a long time already, 10 hours. That's incredible. Holy
Isn't
cow.
it? I mean, I can't make it more than maybe 2 at a bar. Even in my younger days, 10 hours is amazing.
You gotta have some stamina for that.
Well, I guess you just have to keep doing the drugs. But Erika snapped, yelling and screaming at the bouncer or anyone who looked at her the wrong way. BJ restrained her, and after that, Erika took her gun out of her purse and began waving it around, screaming, "I'll kill you, I'll kill you." So I'm just amazed no one called the police and had her arrested. Seems like the bouncer was letting them get away with a lot. You have to wonder, were they paying him off or something?
I don't know. He's pretty relaxed with them.
Well, he seems to be. He had said he was going to call the police earlier after BJ was caught trying to pick the lock of the ATM inside the bar. But now, when she's waving the gun around, the bouncer said if they didn't leave right then, he would finally call the police. So BJ grabbed Erika, but she was laughing like a mad woman, brandishing her gun. And they left the club, but their new friend Justin went along with them. So close to midnight, after Erika, BJ, and Justin had left Sifrits, Justin's friend Melissa began receiving telephone calls at her home. Justin was drunk, and he wanted her to meet him and his 2 new friends at another Ocean City bar. He wasn't sure which one they were going to. But after being talked into meeting them, Melissa agreed to drive down to Ocean City from her home in Delaware, which took just about half an hour. Justin had said that he was stuck on the side of the road with his new friends, and they couldn't change the flat tire. All of them were just so drunk that they had no idea what to do. BJ had tried to get the Jeep lifted up on a jack as Erika took photos. So when Melissa found them, she pulled over and soon realized that they were just too drunk to change the tire. They'd been sitting on the side of the road, unsure of what to do next. BJ had gotten the tire off of the Jeep, but he couldn't figure out how to get the spare tire on. Melissa was able to put the new tire on the Jeep, and when she was done, BJ and Erika thanked her and offered to buy her a drink. Now, it was strange, Melissa noticed, how Erika and BJ seemed wasted one minute and cold sober the next. She felt uneasy about the situation, and the couple did seem off somehow. BJ and Erika were pressuring Justin to get Melissa to have a drink with them, and finally she did agree, saying, "Okay, just one."
So they drove to Fishtails, which is a bar just a few blocks away. And the last thing Melissa wanted to do was stay out all night. So after they entered Fishtails, Erika took out her camera and started taking photos of everyone. Now, Melissa never noticed BJ insisting that Erika take photos. It seemed to her that Erika was doing it all on her own, excited to remember the night. When it's time to leave, Melissa told Erika to call a taxi because they were too drunk to drive. But Erika pleaded with her to come home with them, drive them to their condo. The Rainbow, where they were staying, wasn't far. Erika and BJ could take a taxi home, then get a ride back in the morning to pick up the Jeep. Erika sounded desperate, so Melissa agreed to follow BJ and make sure they got home okay. So they left, BJ and Erika in their Jeep, and Justin and Melissa in her car. So they pulled into the parking lot at the Rainbow, and then just minutes later, BJ ran up to Melissa's driver's side window. Didn't want her to leave. He no longer seemed intoxicated, so he asked her to help him get Erika upstairs. And then when Melissa got out of the car, Justin woke up and fell out of the passenger side door and onto the pavement. I guess he's still feeling some effects, huh?
It seems like he was just like blackout drunk.
So he followed Melissa over to the Jeep to help with Erika. Now this was likely part of BJ and Erika's plan all along. They wanted to get Melissa and Justin upstairs. If he had wanted to, BJ could have picked up the 95-pound Erika in one arm or just tossed her over his shoulders. Now inside the lobby, BJ talked Melissa into helping him get Erika all the way upstairs. Justin was behind them, and he's just kind of stumbling around. He's having trouble navigating.
Well, when they got to the door on the top floor, Erika suddenly seemed to come out of her stupor and started looking through her purse for her keys. She grabbed her keys out of her purse and opened the door without any difficulty. So it was strange how she just sobered up so quickly. They walked into the penthouse, and Erika put her purse on the table and went into the laundry room, where she noticed that the washing machine wasn't working. She'd put some wash in before she and BJ had gone out that night, and the clothes were still in there soaked. What Erika didn't know was that Geney and Joshua's hair had clogged up the machine. They had washed some of the clothes that had been lying on the bathroom floor as they were cutting up the bodies. So before Melissa could say goodnight and leave for home, Erika took her by the arm and led her into the living room. She said she wanted to show Melissa around, and it was a beautiful condo. BJ and Justin grabbed some beer, and they were sitting at the kitchen table drinking it. Then Erika came out of another room with clothing and jewelry to show Melissa. "I have this ring my grandmother gave me," she explained. "It's in my purse." Then Erika started looking around for her purse, but she couldn't seem to find it. Bad sign.
I've seen this scenario before.
Yeah.
So Melissa thought Erika had put her purse on the table when they walked in. But then maybe Erika had put it in her bedroom upstairs. She wanted to be helpful. Erika is entering panic mode, and she seemed just so anxious. There were other things inside her purse that she was worried about, like Joshua and Jeannie's IDs. So BJ asked what's going on. Justin, still pretty drunk, he's not contributing to the conversation very much. Erika is now frantic. "Beej, we need to find my purse. Those people, their IDs are in my purse." Now Melissa could tell the phrase had some sort of secret meaning to Erika and BJ. She was pretty uncomfortable at this point. Wow.
Well, if she only knew, right? She didn't even know what a bad position she was in. So Melissa, BJ, and Erika began looking around the main floor of the condo, under pillows and couch cushions, beneath the kitchen table, and wherever they'd been after they walked into the condo. Melissa thought, well, maybe someone had thrown the purse over the balcony as some kind of weird joke. So she walked outside and looked down, but she couldn't see anything but the beach. After searching through the main floor, Melissa and Erika went upstairs to look around. When Melissa got to the bathroom where the hot tub was, she noticed that the bathroom door was off its hinges and it was leaned up against the door frame. It had what appeared to be a bullet hole in the door, but she wasn't sure what it was, and she didn't ask. BJ then came upstairs as Erika and Melissa were searching, and he suggested that someone should go down and look for the purse inside of the Jeep. But thinking about it for a moment, Melissa knew Erika's purse was not in the Jeep. "We couldn't have gotten into the condo without her keys, which were in her purse," she said. Erika had opened the door to the condo, and she had to go in her purse to find the keys. But still, Melissa and Erika went downstairs and began digging through the Jeep. By now, Erika was hysterical. She was running around, mumbling to herself, telling Melissa that there was nothing more important in the world than finding that purse. After not finding the purse in the Jeep, Melissa and Erika went back upstairs. Melissa walked in first, looking toward the stairs leading up to the bedroom and bathroom. Up where the hot tub was located, she saw BJ and Justin standing on the small landing. BJ was standing behind Justin, and he had a weird look on his face. Melissa looked closer. Inside the front of BJ's pants, he had a large handgun, and this startled her. Melissa hated all guns. She said nothing and continued hunting for that purse. She was getting really anxious to get out of there. But BJ walked up to Melissa and grabbed her by the face with his large hands, pulling her nose to nose with his face. "It's very, very important that we find this purse," BJ said, now apparently stone cold sober. He was very intimidating and frightening. Melissa realized that BJ needed to find his wife's purse or there was going to be trouble. More than that, Melissa had a really sick feeling that BJ was implying that she or Justin had stolen the purse. BJ, look, there's no reason for me to take the purse, Melissa said, and then he finally did release his grip on her face. She said, I helped you put your vehicle back on the road. I'm not a thief. And he didn't seem to be really listening, so Melissa decided to appeal to Erika for help. She explained to her that she didn't like guns and asked her nicely to ask BJ to put the gun away. But Erika seemed to ignore that. Then she sarcastically said to BJ, BJ, Melissa doesn't like guns. Then BJ and Erika laughed at her. So Melissa's getting a really sick feeling at this point. But she continued to help in the search. Moments later, she was in the front bedroom searching when she heard a loud voice coming from another room. Oh, look what I found.
Yeah, so Melissa walked out of the bedroom and saw that BJ had pushed a cushion from the couch forward and pulled the purse out. Thank goodness it was over, and the purse had been in the couch the entire time. But it couldn't have been. Melissa was relieved, but it didn't make sense. She had looked in that area of the couch several times, and there wasn't anything there. So it was close to 3 a.m. when Melissa finally got out of there. She had no idea that she was so close to being killed until 10 days later when she learned what Erika and BJ might have done to her and Justin if BJ hadn't found that purse.
Yeah, so we don't know why they didn't go through with it that time. Kind of seems like Erika wanted to kill these people. She was definitely trying to lean things that way.
Yeah, it sounds like.
So
then what, BJ didn't feel like it? I mean, he's the one that eventually found the purse.
Right, so maybe he decided he didn't want to do it. If you think about it, it's a lot of work after, if nothing else. If you have no heart or empathy, at least you do have a lot of work to do cleaning up afterwards.
Well, dismembering a corpse probably is pretty difficult anyway.
Yes, even if you're psychotic, it's physical work.
It's very physical work, and unless you've been to medical school or had medical training, it's not that easy to cut up a body.
I wouldn't think so. So I'm not sure why they didn't go through with it, but Justin and Melissa were very lucky. They got very close to being victims, I believe.
Oh, I don't think there's any question.
Yeah.
I mean, the scenario is exactly the same as it was with Geney and Joshua.
I think so, and I think if they hadn't been stopped, they probably would have become serial killers.
Yes.
So Geney Crutchley had worked at an insurance company outside of Fairfax City, Virginia, for over 5 years. Her manager, Gloria, was a really good friend of hers, so Gloria was quite concerned when Geney missed their weekly department meeting on May 29. Geney had never missed a meeting before. In fact, she'd never even been late to work. Gloria had spoken to Geney on the Friday before Geney and Joshua left for Ocean City, and she knew that they had planned to return on Tuesday the 28th. But Geney didn't show up for work, and there was no answer at her house. So Gloria and a friend drove to Geney's mother's house to see if she knew anything or if she had heard from her daughter, and she hadn't. So Gloria and Geney's mother started calling Geney's friends. No one had heard from Geney or Joshua. So getting more and more concerned, Gloria began calling hospitals along the way that Geney and Joshua would have driven. She worried that Geney and Joshua had gotten into a car accident, perhaps. So Gloria then contacted the Virginia State Police, and a trooper told her to call the local police department. So she filed a missing persons report with the City of Fairfax Police Department.
And then the following day, May 30th, Thursday, BJ and Erika decided that they had to get the bathroom door painted and hung. And we can't have it there with a bullet hole in it.
No.
So BJ had purchased the new door at Home Depot already, but it needed to be painted and hung. A new couple would be checking into the room in 2 days. So they got some work to do, but Erika decided she wanted to lay out in the sun. She was obsessed not only with being thin, but with being tan. She had bought a 1-week tanning pass at a local tanning salon. BJ sat at the kitchen table and smoked a joint. And then he's hungry. So he decided to go to Hooters for some wings. So Erika went tanning, and BJ went into Hooters, bought hot wings and fries and a pitcher of beer. And when she met up with him at the table after her tanning, BJ looked pale. He ran into a restroom and vomited. Erika then paid the bill, and they left.
So back at their condo at the Rainbow, BJ slept as Erika emailed a few people and then sold some more stolen items on eBay. BJ was still sleeping when she finished, so she shook him awake, and he told Erika that he wanted to go to the Green Turtle, a local pub that served crabs and beer. So as they walked into the Green Turtle, both stopped at the front door and looked at a missing persons flyer on the door. It was for Geney and Joshua. So in surveillance video footage that police later looked at, they were really disturbed to see Erika smile when she looked at it and walk into the pub like it was just any other ordinary day. BJ also looked at the poster and showed no reaction. So the couple stayed at the Green Turtle for most of that night, listening to music, drinking, and then taking breaks to snort Xanax in the restroom. They seemed perfectly happy and were just having a good old time.
And on the way home, Erika and BJ stopped to rob the Hooters restaurant, which was now closed. What they didn't know was that the Ocean City Police Department did routine patrols past Hooters all through the night. When they entered the Hooters, BJ had tripped a silent alarm. So there they are in the gift shop, started taking things, including cigarettes, T-shirts, anything with the Hooters logo on it. Erika made trips back to the Jeep with the stolen goods as BJ picked out what he wanted. Both of them had a loaded gun on them. BJ's was in a shoulder holster, and Erika had hers in the back of her pants. So at the early hours of May 31st, when Ocean City Police Department officers responded to a tripped alarm at the Hooters in the strip mall. So as the patrol car pulled into the strip mall parking lot, they saw a Jeep Cherokee backed into a parking space in front of the Hooters store. 2 people were burglarizing the place.
Well, as the 2 officers pulled closer to the Jeep, Erika sat in the Jeep's passenger seat and didn't move. BJ, who'd been about to get into the driver's seat of the Jeep, backed away from the door. They were caught in the act. As an officer arrested BJ, he asked, "Can we just put the stuff back? We stole it, but we can put it back." BJ seemed to think that he could talk his way out of this, which was ridiculous. After he was handcuffed, the officer patted him down and found his semi-automatic handgun inside his holster. He was also wearing a second holster, but that one held 2 magazine clips for the other gun. The gun had a clip in it as well and a bullet in the chamber. So BJ seemed prepared for a gunfight. The officers looked inside of the Jeep and they saw all kinds of Hooters stuff packed in the back. Erika got out of the Jeep with her hands up and she was handcuffed and walked around to the back of the Jeep. When Erika was patted down, she had a buck knife, the kind that folds in half, clipped to the pocket of her jeans. She also had her loaded handgun tucked into the back of her jeans. The search of the Jeep turned up another gun, a third one, in the center console, and it was also fully loaded. Beneath the gun was a lockpick, one of the tools BJ kept with him at all times. They also found 2 ski masks and a pair of rubber gloves. After several minutes, Erika called out to the officers. She said she needed her medication. She was shaking and crying. "I have anxiety problems," Erika said. "I haven't taken my medication and I need it, and I need you to get it for me in my purse." Now, it had probably been, a half an hour since she snorted Xanax?
Yeah.
Not very long.
They get into the Hooters, they trip the alarm. It didn't take long for the police to respond.
No.
So, yeah, it was quick.
So a police officer walked over to the Jeep and began digging through Erika's purse, searching for her prescription medication. But by this time, additional patrol cars were arriving at the scene. And of course, Erika wasn't going to get any of those pills from her purse. They weren't even labeled in prescription bottles. But the police officer did find 4 spent .357 shells in her purse, and he thought it was odd to have spent shells on her. But, there was even more. Inside of the purse, Erika had a small zipper bag with IDs inside. And the photos of 2 people on the driver's licenses found inside her purse looked very familiar to the officer. It was the missing couple. The combination of the weapons, the shells, and the IDs was a very ominous find. So these Hooter thieves had done something to this missing couple, the police felt pretty sure.
The Ocean City police captain took over the investigation, which quickly went from a burglary investigation to a homicide. The detectives who already had been handling the missing persons case of Geney and Joshua were brought in. After going through the Jeep and making a connection between Erika and BJ and the missing couple, they needed to get over to the Rainbow condominium to check things out. So it was obvious to the experienced investigators that spent bullet casings, along with IDs from a missing couple, probably meant someone had been shot. With the evidence found inside the Jeep, it looked to detectives like Erika and BJ had taken Geney and Joshua hostage. They may have been holding them against their will, so they felt it was essential to get to the Sifrits' rented condo, get in right away. So finding the IDs of Geney and Joshua on Erika and BJ after their arrest gave the police the right to use an exigent circumstance clause to go into BJ and Erika's condo without a search warrant. So exigent circumstances are used in situations that demand immediate action and allow the police or other authorities to circumvent their usual procedures. So basically emergency conditions. The circumstances have to be such that it would cause a reasonable person to believe that quick action was needed to prevent physical harm to the officers. So in this situation, where a police officer can take immediate action to conduct a search, probable cause exists. This can be done without first obtaining a warrant. So just to summarize, exigent circumstances exist when a person's life or safety is threatened, a suspect's escape is imminent, or evidence is about to be removed or destroyed. This is also termed as emergency circumstances or special circumstances search.
Well, yeah. In addition to the IDs, they'd found plastic zip ties and ski masks in the Jeep. So detectives, of course, were hoping it was a hostage situation, but they feared that there had been a double homicide. Early that morning, detectives, uniformed officers, and EMTs went into room 1101 at the Rainbow and searched for living people, but they found no one. But as they walked past the glass table in the kitchen area downstairs, they found 2 spent rounds of ammunition, and both had what appeared to be human tissue and blood on them. One of them was more damaged than the other. It appeared that someone had dug it out of a person after shooting them. So now we have probable cause established. They went to get a judge to sign a search warrant so they could get a forensic team in there to go through the condo in detail. Back on the morning of May 29th, Ocean City Police Department Detective Scott Bernal got a call from a Fairfax City, Virginia police officer about Geney and Joshua. Although the Ocean City Police routinely took calls from other police departments, Detective Bernal has said that he sensed right away that this call was different. He immediately felt like something was wrong. Detective Bernal took a description of Geney's car. It was a maroon Acura with personalized license plate Geney C. He drove out to where the couple had been staying, the Atlantis. As the detective pulled into the Atlantis parking lot, he immediately noticed the maroon Acura with the personalized plate. It was just parked there by itself. Detective Bernal could tell it hadn't been driven for a while. Every parking space in front of the building was empty, except for the Acura in the last space on the end. He got out and he checked around the outside of the car, and he could tell it had not been moved. The tires had sediment, leaves, and sand on all sides of them. So he called in for another officer to go with him into the condo. He didn't want to enter alone in case it turned out to be a bad situation. So while Bernal waited for the other officer, he spoke to the manager on duty. When Ocean City PD Officer Brown showed up, the 2 men were let into the unit Geney and Joshua had rented. Bernal knew that Joshua and Geney should have left for home by now. There was no reason so late in the week for them still to be hanging around. Bernal walked into the room with Brown and found all of Joshua and Geney's personal belongings still there. They weren't even packed up. It looked like Joshua had been working. There was a computer with some papers on a table. Jeannie's camera was on the counter as well. It was as if Geney and Joshua had gone out for dinner and never returned. Also, Jeannie's purse was there. That's a bad sign. Walking through the rental, Bernal noticed 2 wine glasses on the table, and the liquid levels in the glasses were different. Next to those wine glasses were 2 other glasses which also had wine in them. Geney and Joshua had had company, it appeared. And when they looked in the bathroom, all of their toiletries were still there too. So Bernal called his captain and told him that something was not right there. He'd also found a grocery receipt on a table that listed all of the groceries that Geney and Joshua had purchased on Saturday, May 25th. He looked through the refrigerator and cabinets, and all of those items were still there unopened. So it seemed that no one had been in that rental since Saturday. The captain told Bernal not to worry about it. They'd look into it the next day. But Bernal and Brown had really strong feelings that Geney and Joshua, or at least one of them, were dead. Bernal went ahead and secured the rental as a crime scene. Then he arranged for Geney's car to be towed. Bernal then called the Ocean City PD to get a tow truck out to impound Geney's car for safekeeping. He called the Delaware State Police, the Maryland State Police, and the medical examiner's offices in both Delaware and Maryland. He also started calling family and friends, but still, no one had heard from Geney and Joshua, and that didn't surprise him.
On May 31st, while the Sifrits were in police custody, and the forensic team was going through their condo rental at the Rainbow Condominium Complex, investigators were putting together a horrifying scenario of what might have taken place inside the bathroom a few days earlier. They didn't know at this point how heartless and brutal the murders had been, but it was obvious that at least one murder had been committed there. Geney and Joshua's Atlantis room key was found on an end table in the living room. As they tore apart the upstairs bathroom, some of the blood they found was still wet. Rolls of film and some photos of BJ, Erika, and Geney and Joshua were found as well. And on one bathroom wall, there was a drop of blood dripping down alongside the vanity. And when technicians ripped out the vanity, all along the floorboard there was dark, dried blood. So it appeared that the blood had seeped underneath before the cleanup was done.
Which would necessarily mean a large amount of blood.
Exactly.
Well, even more disturbing, when detectives took out the drain plugs in the bathroom sink, the water stopper was completely red with blood. They also found a piece of someone's scalp with hairs attached to it, wrapped up inside of the drain. After closely examining the grout, blood had actually stained just about every inch of it. On the side of the vanity there was spatter and smears of blood, like there'd been some kind of a physical struggle there. A mattress upstairs in one of the bedrooms also had a large blood stain about 3 feet around. In the corner of one room there was a plastic cooler, and inside they found 2 of Erika's 5 to 6 foot long snakes. In the laundry room there were new bottles of Drano and fresh cans of paint, along with painting and cleaning supplies. And the clothes dryer's lint trap was overfilled with hair and flesh and coagulated blood that had turned into a gel. This is absolutely disgusting. Swabs were taken from the blood stains, which, no surprise, they were all later identified as matching the DNA of either Geney or Joshua.
Then there was also a silver ring with a dragon engraving found in Erika's purse that was later identified as belonging to Joshua. DNA testing identified blood from both Joshua and Geney on the ring. Geney was a major contributor to the DNA sample found on the ring, and Joshua a minor contributor. This is the same ring that Erika had been wearing around her neck in some of her photos of her and BJ.
Yeah, so it's a souvenir from murder. And they're just happy about it. These are really sick people. Now, of course, the police had plenty of evidence now, both circumstantial and physical. Later at the police station, Erika confessed to being an accessory after the crime, but she blamed BJ for the murders. She agreed to take detectives to where the bodies were, and Erika directed Detective Bernal to 2 dumpsters located behind a grocery store in Delaware. but the dumpsters had already been emptied. After searching the landfill where the contents of the Food Lion dumpster had been emptied, police were able to recover body parts of both Joshua and Geney. Now, it was very fortunate that this landfill was very organized, so you knew exactly where to go for what day and what location of garbage. But it was also a horrendous experience being in that landfill. Very unhealthy, just the smell, the flies, everything, just really difficult to be there. So police only found the left leg of Geney, making it so that the cause of her death was never definitively determined. They recovered the torso and both arms of Joshua Ford, though, and 2 bullets fired from the .357 Magnum found on Erika at Hooters on the night she was arrested were recovered from Joshua's torso. So a Memorandum of Understanding, or an MOU, came out of negotiations with Erika and her attorney. The MOU read that Erika agreed to cooperate with the state in the prosecution of Benjamin, her husband, and further agreed to testify truthfully on behalf of the state at Benjamin's trial. The MOU stated that the state would not seek a sentence of death or life without parole against Erika as long as she provided reliable information to the state. The MOU also said that if Erika took a polygraph examination and was found not deceptive on all questions related to the homicides, the state wouldn't prosecute her for the homicide. But when Erika came in for her polygraph exam, she ended up confessing to helping to commit the murders, maybe even being behind them, in her pre-polygraph interview. So a pre-polygraph interview is just a way for the person taking the test to be made more relaxed and comfortable with the interviewer. But Erika, being who she was, could not resist talking about herself. She talked nonstop. She started out talking about her relationship with BJ, and she ended up telling the interviewer about her telling BJ, just fucking do it, and about how she had cut Geney without knowing whether or not Geney was dead or alive. So it turned out that Erika never even took the polygraph. Her deal to not be prosecuted for homicide was gone, and then she was charged with homicide.
Oh, Erika, you should have kept your mouth shut.
Yeah, well, I'm glad she didn't. I'm glad she's locked up.
So because of the publicity in this case, the Sifrits trials were moved out of Worcester County, Maryland. Benjamin's trial was held in Rockville, and Erika's was held in Frederick. At Benjamin's 2003 trial, Melissa testified that she was subjected to the same ritual that Joshua and Geney had gone through, although she wasn't killed on the night when she and her friend Justin had been inside the Sifrits condo. Lucky for them.
It was very lucky.
So Erika's convicted of the first-degree murder of Joshua Ford, the second-degree murder of Geney Crutchley. So she was sentenced to life for the first-degree murder of Joshua, 20 years to run consecutively for the second-degree murder of Geney, and 18 months to run concurrent for theft.
In a separate trial, Benjamin Sifrit was sentenced to 30 years for the second-degree murder of Geney, 25 years to run concurrent for first-degree assault of Geney, and 5 years to run consecutively for accessory after the fact. He was actually acquitted of the murder of Joshua, primarily because Erika's gun had been used to kill Joshua. So I really am kind of stunned that he didn't get more punishment.
Yeah.
But he didn't talk, and I think that's what was in his favor.
Probably.
He knew not to talk. He gave name, rank, and serial number.
Yeah.
And he was done. But in 2010, Benjamin Sifrit filed for divorce, which was granted. Both Erika and BJ have filed numerous appeals, and all have failed. Benjamin exhausted his last appeal in 2010, so he'll be eligible for parole this year. But it's highly unlikely that he'll get it, and I'll keep my fingers crossed. Erika's appeal, citing ineffectiveness of counsel, was denied in 2014. And she'll still be eligible for parole in 2024. So just thinking of punishments of different people who committed different crimes, it seems like they got off kind of lightly for what they did. To me, these are brutal planned murders.
They didn't get charged anything for the dismemberment. There is something like that, like abuse of a corpse or something.
Absolutely there is, yes. Plus, I would think these are both first-degree murders, and both of this couple are responsible.
Yes.
So it's a really difficult case to even think about.
It's tough to think about, and it doesn't appear that the punishment fit the crime.
Exactly, yes. But we can be happy that they were stopped because I'm so sure they would have killed more people. And if I was Melissa or Justin, I would just be thanking my lucky stars I came so close to a horrible death.
No kidding.
So thank you to Tristan Capel for our music. And if you have comments, a case suggestion, or a beer recommendation, go ahead and send us an email to truecrimebrewery@tiegrabber.com. You can also go to our website, tiegrabber.com, to write comments for us or leave us a voicemail. And your voicemail may be played on an upcoming episode, so we'd love to hear from you. I'll also include a direct link in our show notes that you can click on and record your voicemail right from your device. Also, if you enjoy our show, we would really appreciate it if you would leave us a review on iTunes or wherever it is that you listen to us. So here comes Dickie with a bag of feedback for us.
Actually, 3. I have a couple voicemails and 1 email.
So our first voicemail is from Rose, and it's a comment as well as a case suggestion.
Hi, Tie Grabber and Tie Grabby. This is Chef Rose Johnson, and I was just listening to episode 10, Mary Yoder, and I wanted to let you know that I totally think that the girlfriend, Katie Connolly, did in fact kill her. One of my reasons for that is because women killers often use poison, and I think that her ego was scorned. And I'm not sure, but I think I heard that the mother was counseling her son, like, not to go back into a relationship with Katie, which, if that is the case, then I could see this young girl being so scorned and blaming the mother, thinking, oh, the mother poisoned her son against her, and she's the whole reason why, he broke up with her for good. So that's where my thinking is. Plus, all the circumstantial evidence is, all of it points to the young girl, Katie. Let's see, what else? For a future episode for you to look into, I don't know if you have already, but it's the New Bedford Highway Killer. Took place in the late 80s, where they found a lot of murdered women along the highway in Massachusetts, and they have yet to solve the case. It's pretty scary and gruesome. And for a beer, I was thinking the Fort Hill Brewery, and they have one of their beers is like cloudy and IPA and hoppy, and just kind of reminds me of a cold winter's night along the highway where all these women were found in Massachusetts.
Wow. Cold
Cold and cloudy and, yucky. I don't think it tastes yucky, but it's that kind of feeling. So yeah, thank you for your fabulous episodes. I listen to all of them while I cook, and I got to get back to it. And yeah, have a good one. Bye.
Thanks, Rose. So that's a very good voicemail. We've got some comments, we've got a case suggestion, and a beer review.
You see?
Very thorough.
She hit all the spots.
So I definitely agree with Rose on Mary Yoder. I think she makes some great points. Because actually, Katie did say during one of her police interviews, I know that poison is usually a woman's weapon, something like that.
Yes.
Also, it makes sense to me that Mary wouldn't want her son to get back together with Katie, whether she liked Katie or not, because it was a toxic relationship. They were fighting, they were off and on. It makes perfect sense to me.
Oh, it was a horrible relationship.
Yes. So as far as the Bedford killer, that was between 1988 and 1989 when 9 women were killed along a highway in Massachusetts, and it is unsolved. And I have to say, I really love the imagery of the cloudy beer and the cloudy murders along the highway. That's very poetic. Thanks a lot, Rose.
Yeah, it's an interesting case. Besides the 9 women who were killed, there's 2 other women who they're missing.
They're missing, yeah. Yeah. It's never a good sign, really.
No.
Now, I wonder if these were women who were kind of, I don't know how to word it, if they were kind of off societies.
They were sex workers.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that answers your question.
So they are often victimized, which is very sad. So we have another voicemail, and this one is from Andrea, and she also has comments and a case suggestion.
Hi, Jill and Dick. This is Andrea from Australia. I just wanted to say a big thank you for the beautiful merchandise that I got last week. Really good quality and lots of extra freebies in there. I really appreciated it. I've been listening to your podcast on YouTube. It's been about 3 or 4 months now. I find it's really good to listen to them at night. I love the way you guys talk to each other. It just sounds like you're such a wonderful couple and have a really lovely marriage. And the fact that you can share a hobby together, I don't know, you're both really cute. I love the way Dick has his doctor stuff and just provides insight. And I love how Jill is so compassionate and willing to look at the overall picture for victims. And also when the ones who commit the crimes have had a rough life, Jill is always willing to show some compassion, even if things go in the wrong direction ultimately. So I am from a town called Frankston, and I was thinking if you guys haven't covered Paul Denyer, that might be a really good serial killer to cover. He was active when I was a teenager. We had 3 killings in Frankston, and just a few months ago there was actually a petition to try to keep him in jail because I think his parole must be coming up soon. So yeah, look into Paul Denyer. If you guys could cover him in one of your podcasts, that'd be awesome. So thank you so much for the wonderful job you both do in sharing these true crime stories. I really love the long format. A lot of true crime is short, 10 minutes or 15 or maybe half an hour. But I really love listening to you guys go to distant in covering so many angles in each story. So keep up the good work. Thank you for the wonderful swag. And yeah, the beer stuff. I'm not a drinker, but listening to Dick's reviews of different craft beers, you actually got me really curious. I'm thinking maybe it's time to try some craft beers because they just sound delicious, and I love how much variety there is. So not really a drinker, but I'm thinking I might start drinking. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Andrea from Australia. We actually have so many people in Australia, right? That's like second to the United States. Yeah, our listeners are in Australia.
There seems to be a lot of Australians that listen.
Yes. So we've got some kind of vibe there going,
yeah,
which is good.
This is an interesting case also. Again, it's kind of a serial killer one that might not be your favorite.
I don't know if favorite is even an issue here. It's just, is there something that we think is worth discussing? That's all.
Oh, okay.
Pretty simple.
There's only one other comment I'd make besides thinking about doing this case.
Okay.
The perpetrator, the one who's been convicted, Paul Denyer, decided once he was in prison that he was transgender. And there's been this whole battle about who's going to pay for his treatment and surgery.
That's a tough one. I can see why that's a little bit tough.
Yeah. So far, the state refuses to pay.
Yeah, I don't know enough to give an opinion on that, really.
Yeah.
But I do know that we do have some books. I think this case is in one of them. There are several people from Australia who've sent us crime books and things that we haven't really heard of here. And I believe that was one of the cases. And Dick, I'm just going to take this opportunity to tell you, you do a great job on the beer reviews. The beers do sound delicious. And maybe your legacy in life will not be taking care of sick children, but in fact, spreading the news about craft beer throughout the world. What do you think? Or maybe both.
I'd prefer both.
Okay.
But you could, maybe I'm the Johnny Appleseed of craft beer.
Well, yeah, you got me into it. Before I met you, a craft beer to me was like a Heineken or a Guinness.
Yeah, see?
So I've learned a lot, definitely, about it, which has been a lot of fun. The length of the podcast is basically just based on what I would want, because I'm not a professional podcaster. I guess now I am, but every decision I make is just based on what I would like. And I personally will not listen to a podcast that's less than 45 minutes. And it's mostly because I'm going to listen while I'm going to sleep or I'm doing something, and I don't want to be interrupted with having to start a new episode. So that's all. But I also think that the longer format, getting into more details, is something that, you and I enjoy, maybe more than the listeners do.
Well, I don't know. I think the overwhelming majority of our listeners are happy with the length of our podcasts.
Well, I guess you'd have to be, or you wouldn't be one of our listeners, because
True.
They do tend to be longer form.
Yes.
So now I have one email from Alice B. with a case suggestion. And Alice writes, I would really love if you could cover the case of Michelle Blair. She murdered 2 of her children and kept them in a freezer for 1 to 2 years after believing they had sexually abused one of her younger children. She had come from a background of abuse and trauma herself, and when she opened up about it to her mother, nothing was done. This obviously left her with a lot of locked up feelings, which clearly came out in the most horrific and heartbreaking way. In her court appearances on YouTube, she's always very angry and verbally aggressive, admitting that she did it and she'd do the same again. I've never seen court appearances like hers. Once I started watching, I went down a rabbit hole. I would love if you could cover this case. I recently found your channel and have been watching many of your videos on YouTube and really enjoying them. You two seem to have more information included than most true crime shows that I follow. I love hearing more about the cases that I didn't know, so I would love to hear more about the case of Michelle Blair. So this is a tough one for me. This is the kind of case that I have a lot of difficulty covering. The child abuse, the horrors, actually. And then when I think about the perpetrator's childhood and the horrors she went through, it's just a lot to grapple with.
It is.
Yeah, it really is. So we'll consider it, but I have to just tell you that's a tough one for me.
Oh, we'll look it over. We've seen a show, I know.
On this case?
On this case.
Okay, I don't remember
or
that.
I've seen it. And if I've seen it, you've seen it.
Probably. But it does sound like a complete horror show for everyone involved.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Yeah, which is really hard for me to deal with. But absolutely appreciate your case suggestion, and I welcome more. Right?
Right. We'll be looking for it.
Absolutely. All right, Dickie, I think we're going to wind things up now.
I think we're ready. I got stuff to do.
Okay. So thank you, everyone, for listening. And as always, for your case suggestions and comments. They're very much appreciated. So we'll see you next time at The Quiet End.
We'll save a couple seats.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.